In episode number 6 of the show From, we once again had many new revelations about the town and its residents, as well as more evidence supporting the theories and predictions we have discussed in this channel. This time, instead of doing a linear recap, we will section the highlights of the show within their own chapters, as context will be needed before we delve into these new theories. Let's start with the highlights of episode number 6. At the beginning of episode number 6, we see Father Catre giving an amazing speech to the town's small congregation about how all we humans are born into chaos, and we seek to find a meaning for chaos through faith and by trying to search for signs that may suggest that there is a higher purpose to it all. At the end of the day, whatever the meaning of it all is, if there is such a meaning, what matters is how the chaos of existing shapes who we are, and how we grow beyond that chaos. Father Catre's speech drives a concept that I've personally contemplated for a long time, about how ultimately it is not a supposed ethereal, grander meaning to existence that really matters, but our never-ending search for that meaning, the joys as well as the suffering, and the way we make the best of the short lifespans we have in this world. This also made me think of how we as an audience are equally striving to find signs and meanings behind the events that are unfolding in this show. Some of us even argue how certain theories for the show may be underwhelming if they happen to be true, which prompts the question, does it really matter whatever ends up being the truth behind what's happening in this mysterious town, if such information is even revealed? But the way this show makes us wander from the superficial things to the philosophical, as we see the characters of the show suffer, learn, and evolve, in my opinion, outweighs whatever the supposed objective answer for their collective circumstances is. Father Catre's speech is also supported by a scene where Julie is seen finding a small arrangement of flowers laying on the porch of Colony House, as if left for somebody. She takes the flowers with a smile on her face, and this could be seen as Julie's own way of looking for special signs amidst the town's chaos. We later see Julie explaining to Fatima how she found the flowers already arranged on the porch of Colony House, to which Fatima replies with a joke that maybe there's a phantom florist on the town. Tabitha's ominous question on the wall is finally clarified. Later on, we get a potential clarification about Tabitha's ominous question on the wall, as Father Catre interprets Tabitha's question as a reference to the accident that the Matthews had when their RV crashed into the woods during episode number 1. Father Catre explains to Tabitha that even if they're dead, nothing changes, as they will still try to somehow go home or someplace else, even if that home is not the home they once had. So far, the evidence of the show contradicts the idea that the people of the town are currently dead, but still doesn't rule out the theory that they were going to die just before becoming trapped inside the town. Father Catre and Sarah. Moving on, we see Father Catre going down a basement inside the church, where we find out that he had lied about Sarah escaping into the woods. We see that Sarah is tied up, and it appears that Father Catre is curious about Sarah's actions, especially the voices she hears. Father Catre explains to Sarah that her unspeakable actions will warrant that she's put inside the box as punishment, a death sentence, but that he still believes that she can do something good to help the people of the town. Soon after, we find out the meaning behind the title of this episode, Book 74, as Father Catre explains to Sarah that there are 73 books in the Bible, suggesting that maybe the people of the town have been chosen to write the 74th book of the Bible, and that the voices Sarah is hearing could somehow be part of a higher purpose that they have. Father Catre also explains to Sarah how strange it is that of all of the books in the town, there is not a single Bible in any of the libraries. As Sarah responds to Catre, she explains that the voices she hears tell her that they are just like the people in the town and are trying to help, as they also want to go home and have also been trapped inside the town for a long time. Confused, Catre asks Sarah why would she even believe the voices in the first place, to which Sarah responds that the voices have told her things about herself and the future that they shouldn't have been able to know, including that the Matthews, Jade, and Toby were coming to the town. The voices told Sarah that there was a similar arrival to the town of 2 cars that took place a long time ago and on the same calendar day. This arrival supposedly led to a lot of people dying, and the people inside the 2 cars were somehow responsible for it. The voices promised Sarah that if she did what they asked her to do, everyone will be safe. However, Sarah doesn't know how the people of the town will be safe or go home after she did what they asked her to do. We then see how Sarah desperately breaks down crying, as the voices had promised her that everyone, including her brother, will be safe. I believe this once again echoes the childlike mentality that Sarah has, which in turn makes her highly vulnerable to manipulation and deceit. Sarah's case may once again parallel the abusive, manipulative relationship she may have had prior to arriving at the town, and this highlights another important theme of the show: learning from one's previous mistakes. Given that despite Sarah's circumstances, she still had the free will to make the right and reasonable decisions. Then, Father Catcher tells Sarah that if she could prove that the voices are real, maybe the people of the town may be open to at least considering her situation. Shortly after, we see Sarah entering a trance as the mysterious forces seem to take over her and make her write several messages on paper. When Sarah finishes writing, she tells Father Catcher that the voices told her that they know he buried a bag in the town. And Sarah shows Father Catcher a drawing related to the contents of such a mysterious bag that leaves him in shock. We then see Father Catcher running out and digging with his hands in the same spot we saw him meditating during episode number 5. Father Catcher retrieves a bag from a hole in the ground where we see a bottle of alcohol, a bloody clerical shirt, and a very old Cosmo candy bar with the same art that was drawn by Sarah on the piece of paper. This serves as evidence for the previous indications that Father Catcher may have been hiding a dark past and suggests that he may have been struggling with his faith and alcohol use disorder prior to arriving at the town. Interestingly, if Father Catcher has a history of alcohol use disorder, this could explain his strongly punitive reaction to how Frank Pratt's drinking may have contributed to the death of his family. Father Catcher's bloody clerical shirt, along with the old candy bar and the bottle of alcohol, may also suggest that he was responsible for someone getting hurt, possibly even a child, due to his drinking disorder. The forces of chaos. Following up on the new revelations concerning Sarah's voices and Father Catcher's allusions to new biblical prophecy, it appears clearer that Sarah and possibly now Father Catcher are being seduced and manipulated by the forces of chaos within the context of Norse mythology. We have already explored how the monsters use deceit to manipulate people into letting them in, while the people are unaware that the intent of the monsters is to devour them. With this in mind, both the voices Sarah hears and the monsters themselves may be extensions of a single cluster of chaotic energies that are trying to seduce the people of the town into going astray. However, these forces are part of a very balanced equation and may not necessarily be deemed evil, but a catalyst for change. In our previous video, we explored how the Norse god Loki, also known as the god of chaos, could possibly be behind the scenes of the show, at least symbolically. We have also explored the allusions to Ragnarok in the show, or the end of the world in Norse mythology. A persistent theme we have seen so far since the beginning of this show is the contrast between light and darkness, chaos and order, supported by extensive symbology, including the Theresa's rune on the talismans, which represent the forces of chaos. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok is also referred to as the battle between the forces of chaos, led by Loki, and the forces of order, led by the gods including Odin, Freyr, and Thor. We also explained how during Ragnarok, 2 humans are said to survive by hiding inside the world tree Yggdrasil before the battle of these opposing forces begins. And after that, it is said that a new cycle or chapter will begin where the humans will live in a perfect universe or paradise. This may somehow connect to Father Catcher's allusion that maybe the people in the town have been chosen to write a new book or chapter for humanity. In this sense, the town is both a test and an opportunity for the people in it to learn from their mistakes, survive, and find a new home, in the words of Father Catcher himself. An obvious implication for the latter is that not everyone will survive, nor learn from their mistakes, as people are often bound to endlessly repeat destructive behavioral cycles, not only individually but through generations. The devil is in the details, Tabitha and the lights. We later see Tabitha, Jim, and Jade revealing that the power cables for the lights do not have any wires inside of them, and almost appear to be fake or mock objects for a movie set. Despite this, the lights seem to function and turn on, which makes everyone question where the electricity is coming from. considering there aren't any power lines in the town either. Something that caught my attention about this scene is that it may serve as further evidence that the town is actually an artificial environment that was designed by some entity or entities to resemble a familiar human place. This may also connect to the fact that no one knows where the cattle or the food is coming from. If the town is a well-crafted artificial environment, it will make sense that minor details such as the cables not having any wires may have been overlooked by its designers. Later in the episode, we see Tabitha breaking down the walls to trace down the cables, and we find out that the cables appear to endlessly go below the ground. We also noticed that the lights were flickering throughout the show, which may suggest that something wrong may be happening with whatever is making things in the town work. Something interesting that Boyd suggests during this episode is how something seems to be off in the town, noting how they recently discovered that the talismans also work in enclosures other than the house. Based on the current evidence, it is possible that things in the town will continue to progressively malfunction, and this will inevitably push the people of the town to move to a different place, maybe with the help of the talismans and the faraway trees. Alternatively, the strange functioning of the lights could be explained if the people of the town are trapped in an alternate dimension with its own laws of physics. The malfunctioning of the lights and the reality within the show itself could also be interpreted as a progression of the forces of chaos or entropy, undoing the stability of the cosmos, like the gradual progression of a disease that's not so different from Boyd's Parkinson's symptoms. Time is not linear. The eternal return. During episode number 6, we found out that the possessions of the people who die in the town are stored in the back room of the diner. It is there where we see Tabitha discover what looks like a handmade bracelet she had made for Jim many years ago. Later in the episode, Tabitha explains to Jim that this is exactly the same bracelet she had made for him, evidenced by a very unique mistake she had made while creating it. The twist is that Sarah reminds Jim that he had lost that bracelet many years ago, the same night Julie was born. Then how could it possibly be among the possessions of the people who died in the town? This fascinating paradox leads us down to one of my favorite concepts, the idea that time is circular and not linear, which is perfectly illustrated in Nietzsche's concept of the eternal return or recurrence. What this means is that past, present, and future are all happening at the same time and repeat themselves or reoccur infinitely. This may even be foreshadowed by the sign that's hanging on the diner with the poem by Emily Dickinson, which reads, "Forever is composed of nows." These may further be foreshadowed by the voices who told Sarah that the same two cars, the Matthews and Jades, arrived at the town a long time ago on the same day, as they could even be referring to a previous cycle of life in previous or alternate versions of Jim. Ultimately, this may even serve to support another existing theory that the monsters themselves were once humans. Another implication of the concept of Schrodinger's cat, which was introduced in episode number 5 and explained in our previous video, is that if the characters of the show are both dead and alive at the same time in some quantum superposition of states, then it follows that each person who's alive in the town may have a dead or undead version of them that's also in the town. It would then be interesting to explore if the monsters, the voices themselves, or a third option are somehow related to this concept. Team Science, Jade and Jim. We also saw Jim and Jay experimenting with the radio to see if they could get it to work. While Jim climbs a tree to set up a handmade antenna for the radio, we see that Jay starts having another one of his vivid visions. We can see Jay once again seeing the mysterious symbol he saw in the cellar and mutilated corpses hanging from the tree. We also see what looks like a Civil War soldier chasing Jay and stabbing him with a bayonet. Shortly after, we see Jade snapping back into reality to realize it was just a hallucination. I suspect that what Jade is experiencing is symptomatic of some type of deterioration of space and time, as we have been explaining. And it is also possible that like Ethan, Sarah, and Victor, Jade is special or gifted with some sort of ability of sight that possibly allows him to see through space and time. Later in the episode, we see Jay drawing the mysterious symbol several times on paper while sitting in the diner. Then we see Kenny's mother leading Jay to the back room of the possessions of people who have died in the town. Kenny's mother gives Jade a notebook that is full of drawings of the same symbol. Once again, this may parallel the discovery of Jim's bracelet among the possessions of the dead, and makes one question whether that notebook belonged to a previous version of Jade, who is also dead, at least in the current now or moment. If this theory turns out to be true, it will be a fascinating twist for the show, and could even be interpreted as a character having multiple lives or tries in a video game, with Sarah's voices being shattered echoes of previous versions of the townspeople. We should also note that Sarah previously compared the voices she hears with shattered or broken glass, implying that their minds are no longer complete or what they used to be. Another chance to be a father. Kenny and Boyd. In episode number 6, we saw Boyd telling Kenny that he will explore beyond the woods now that they know that the talismans work outside of the houses, noting how they are losing spaces in the board to the monsters, once again alluding to the chess symbology. We immediately see Kenny reacting angrily about Boyd's idea, as he may put his life at risk. We also confirm that Kenny's opposition towards Boyd's desire to explore the woods stems from the fact that Kenny views Boyd as a father figure. We then see Boyd trying to ask Christy for advice, and Christy reminding Boyd that all Kenny is looking for is a father, which reminds Boyd that he was inadvertently making the same mistake he made with Ellis once again, mentioning how if we don't learn from our mistakes, we are bound to repeat them. Once again, we see the parallels in how everyone in the town seems to be matched with similar circumstances in which they previously failed, as if they're meant to correct their errors through a second chance, and with new relationships, like we covered in our previous video. Finally, we see Boyd trying to think of the most fatherly action he could take to make Kenny feel better, and we see Boyd inviting Kenny to play catchball while opening up about his Parkinson's disease and symptoms. Boyd then better explains to Kenny the reasoning behind his desire to explore the woods, given the progression of his disease. We can see Kenny and Boyd finally bonding like father and son, as Kenny understands and respects Boyd's decision to go into the woods, telling him they'll play more catchball when he returns. However, we can see that Boyd doesn't believe he'll be able to make it back from this trip. I love you to death. At the end of episode number 6, we see a member of Colony House walking up the stairs while everyone is asleep. He then opens the window curtains and we see one of the monsters holding an arrangement of flowers and telling the man from Colony House that they're beautiful, asking him when she'll be allowed to come inside. This seems to explain the flowers Julie found on the porch earlier in the episode, as this character seems to have been leaving them as a gift for this particular monster. We can clearly see how this scene more strongly showcases the seductive aspect of the monsters and the forces of chaos in general. Here ends episode number 6 of From. We will further explore the symbology of the show and this episode later this week. If you would like to stay tuned with further analysis and interpretations of the show's episodes, please make sure to press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell.